really enjoying this program.
So who are you learning with?
Chagai Halbertal.
Chagai Halbertal. Yeah, I know him vaguely, but I know he's special.
I don't know if he's coming today or not. So Jeff, or Jeff,
I see.
who are
Yes.
your partner?
I beg your pardon?
Who is your chavruta?
Benjamin.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's me.
We're studying.
Nice to see you again, Nancy. And Nancy is your name?
yes, Nancy.
Yeah, Nancy. So nice to see you. And Jeff, it's good to see you also.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It turns out Nancy and I, quite by accident, our parents founded a local synagogue here in the 1950s, right?
Wow.
Oh,
We
wow.
just found a month ago, we were talking and this came to.
By accident. Nancy's a member of our shul, and we were introduced because of Rabbi Steinsaltz, because when this was started, we both signed up, and then we spoke, and it turned out both our parents were involved in founding a synagogue here in the Washington, D.C. area in the very early days of 50, 60 years ago. So it was an amazing coincidence.
Yeah. Your parents knew my parents. It could have happened.
It was the first shul in the area, or was there?
No, it was when we moved in. My parents in the 50s. There were very few shuls in this area, and many of the new post-World War II families that came to Washington, D.C. had trouble finding a suitable shul for them. In our case, it was a Reform shul, and we found it, and it's thriving, and it's still very, very active in the community.
That's the shul of Rabbi Herzberg?
No, Herzfeld. No, this was a Reform shul. And the one we now belong to is Rabbi Herzfeld, which is a modern Orthodox shul. We came to more traditional Judaism later in our lives. And frankly, you don't find what we're having today in the Reform movement, frankly. It's a whole different way of approaching Judaism.
The Chavrata, you mean?
That and studying Tanya and studying Talmud and talking about God. That's
yeah. Rabbi Herzfeld has really opened our eyes, and there's just so much beautiful, rich learning to be done. It's exciting.
Okay, I think we can start, I guess.
Okay.
Rav Aron, just a word. I want to thank you for joining us and giving us this class today. I hope you guys enjoy it, and also we're recording it, so other people that couldn't make it on this time will be able to hear it later on. So, yeah.
Binyamin, you're becoming American, so polite. What's going on here?
I'm sitting in a very polite place now.
I see.
It works.
Contagious. It's contagious.
Everybody here is very polite, and they taught me how to do it properly.
Hi, Leslie. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm so sorry. I'm the no video at the moment because I'm going to be in transit, so that's why. So please forgive me. I don't mean to be invisible,
Excellent.
but I'm very excited, and thank you so much, Aron and Binyamin. Thank you, because he's very polite.
Actually, one of the great virtues of Zoom is the ability to wash dishes in the midst of hearing shiurim and chavutot. So that I accept it. So if any of you have dishes somewhere, now is the time. So what I would like to offer today, and maybe it's even better we're a small group because maybe it could be more interactive, is a few contemplations, a few ideas, trying to think about the very, very basic notion of two souls, which is one of the key concepts of the first, of the whole book of the Tanya, and especially in the first chapters. One of the questions that intrigued me when I was reading the Rabbi Steinsaltz's book about the soul that came out maybe 5 years ago. So it's a very different, if you read that book, it's a short book, rather short book. And the picture he draws there, the picture he gives there is rather different than the picture that Tanya gives. I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if you read the book, but when I read the book, it struck me that for some reason, he didn't really engage the idea of two souls. He was talking about the soul as something made out of layers, different perspectives about the soul, but he wasn't really speaking about the division, the clear-cut division between two souls. So that made me think about different approaches, different ways of I don't think he was trying to say something different than the Tanya. I just think he was saying it in different words. So really, it's a very heavy topic, talking about a soul, especially not even one soul, two souls. One soul is hard enough. But so I would like to. I called the name of the. I was told we needed a topic, so I said let's talk about, can there be a dialogue between the two souls? Can these two souls have a dialogue? Can they connect? Can we have a conversation between these two souls? So the first thing I want to start with is the basic definitions that the Tanya gives to these two souls. I'm sure you're familiar with them. You studied the first two chapters, but just to refresh our memories. So the first soul, according to the Tanya, is what he calls the nefesh habehemit. How would you translate that? Animal soul, primal soul?
I think animal souls is the way his book does it.
Okay, so animal soul, but it's a deceiving description, because we're not animals, we're human. And as Rabbi Steindotz explains in his lengthy commentary on the Tanya, the animal soul is basically what the humanists called the soul, the human soul. We all know about the humanists, right? In the Renaissance, the whole new movement of thinking about the person as the center of the universe. The humanism, which led later on to liberalism, and basically the whole modern world we know it stems from the idea that there's something uniquely special about the human soul, and all the capacity of the human soul, the amazing things people could create, philosophy, psychology, art, math, poetry, and on the other hand, all the terrible things that people could create, all the pain people could inflict upon others, and all of that spectrum of life is basically part of the animal soul. That's still, when Shakespeare writes his beautiful sonatas, when we read this beautiful novel, I just finished reading a Polish author, Olga Tokarczuk. She wrote a beautiful book about Yaakov Frank. Anyway, a beautiful novel, and it's all of that capacity is our capacity as people, as human beings. So when we say nefesh habehemit, we could picture like a person eating or sleeping, someone who was engaged only in the very primal aspects of being, food. But what the Baal Tanya really means when he's saying nefesh habehemit, he means the whole spectrum. So when we talk about nefesh habehemit, the question that arises is, do we even meet the other soul? I mean, actually, this soul is pretty interesting in its own. I mean, you could live a whole full life, full of inspiration, full of excitement, full of life, and never really leave the realm of the animal soul. So the animal soul is basically whoever we are, in a very, very deep sense, in a very, very complex sense. So the question is, why do we even need this idea of two souls? Where does this idea come from? What do we gain from this concept of two souls? What's wrong with one soul? Actually, I'll just give a brief history of this concept because the Tanya is not the first one to talk about the two souls. It actually stems from a more old concept in Kabbalah. And basically, if you really read the Torah, you could find the beginnings of this distinction between two souls. I mean, when you read in the Bible, Hadam hua nefesh, right? The blood is the soul. You're not supposed to eat blood, right? According to Jewish law, we don't eat blood. We kosher our food, we kosher our meat, because blood represents the soul. That's a very materialistic point of view about the soul. On the other hand, you have in the beginning of Genesis, in the beginning of Sefer Bereshit, B'Tselem Elohim barat Adam. God created man in his image. Now the image is obviously not our body. Our body is physical. God is not physical. He's infinite. So obviously this Tselem Elohim is referring to the neshama. So already, if you try to look what the Torah's concept of the soul is, it's very complex, and you could very easily get to this idea of a division. Now, in a lot of the ancient Sifrei Musar are the books that deal with ethics and piety. So we have this concept of Yetzer HaTov and Yetzer Hara. We all grew up, at least Orthodox kids. I mean, as a kid, I remember this concept of Yetzer HaTov. I remember my dad explaining to me this idea of Yetzer HaTov and Yetzer Hara. And I remember, actually, it's interesting that it's the idea that it gave me a lot of, it's a calming idea. Because when you're a kid and you have this rage, let's say you're fighting with someone, and then you have the urge to do something really good to someone, and it's confusing. Who am I? And not that the kid thinks in these words, but some way this idea of Yetzer HaTov, the good inclination and the bad inclination, it makes sense. It gives you a perspective about yourself. Your first way of thinking about yourself. Yes.
Would you agree that the way to view it is you've got the good angel on your right shoulder and you've got the Yetzer Hara here, and they're fighting all the time and you're caught in between. Is that the proper imagery that you had when you first were told about these two competing influences?
I don't know if it was that plastic. I mean, that's like more Pinocchio.
Well, okay.
The small conscience but yeah, sort of this idea of someone inside me trying to, especially for me, in anger. Yeah, what?
There are two people inside each shoulder, and they're always fighting, and you're right in between.
Yeah, definitely, and I also think it's something missing in our world. This idea, I think it's an idea that it gives a lot of clarity, especially for kids. It's also a little bit scary.
I think that just a comment about this idea, I think that this idea is very different from what we are trying to define through the Tanya. And I think that on the primary level, the main difference is whether I am a third entity, which is in between the two sides, or I am a combination of two sides. And I think it makes a difference. Like it's kind of the question, with who am I identified? And if you have this image of you are in the middle, and then you have two angels or two Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara that are on both sides, it means that I am not either of these. I'm not the good and I'm not the bad. I'm kind of supervisor, or I'm a kind of a parv thing in between. And I think that this is different because in when we read the Tanya, at least I don't get the feeling that there is some third entity or personality that is deciding between the two sides. Like sometimes I'm nefesh behemit, the animal soul, and sometimes I am the nefesh elokit, the godly soul. And I think that this is different. I don't know exactly to tell why is this difference is so important, but
I also want to draw a contrast between these two concepts. But first, I want to talk about Yetzer Hatov and Yetzer. I don't think, as Binyamin points out, the Nefesh Elokit and Nefesh Behemit, the animal soul and the divine soul, aren't concepts that are synonymous to the idea of the good inclination and the bad inclination. I think far from it. But I just wanted to paint this picture as a primary picture before we jump into the concept of the Tanya. So the idea of Yetzer Hatov and Yetzer Hara are something very, I think a lot of people could relate to. This idea that, as Binyamin pointed out, I wouldn't say I'm in the middle. I would say I'm the battleground. I'm the spoils of battle. There's the two inclinations fighting each other, and I'm the battlefield. They're fighting on me. So that's a very old concept. It's already, we could find it in the Talmud. We find it in other very ancient sources, and I think it lives on till today in many places as a concept of thinking about good and evil, and also as an educational tool. But I think the Tanya is trying to go a lot deeper than that. I think, as we were speaking before, and by the way, I forgot to say, this is an open class. It's not a lecture. Feel free to drop in your thoughts and contradict me and whatever. After all, we're talking about something that we all have. So everyone here has a say, because everyone here has a soul or two souls. So we're talking about ourselves. I think when we're talking about this idea of the human soul, the animal soul, which is basically the human soul in all of its huge scope. So we're also talking about something that's also good and also evil. I mean, people have a huge capacity to be evil, which is something we know all too well. But on the other hand, we see amazing, especially in our world today, we see amazing acts of goodness and kindness, and those are part of the human soul, and those are still part of the animal soul, because humans are capable, and actually also animals are capable of good. There are many, maybe Binyamin, as a scientist, you could tell me more about it, but there are many cases of animals helping each other. So being good is still part of the human scope. So what are we talking about? I'm going back to my question. Why do we need this divine soul? All the functions of humanity are covered by the animal soul, because we're very special animals. We're human. But what is this divine soul? And this is basically, I think, the most important question in the first chapters of the Tanya, when it's trying to explain basically what's the idea of this divine soul. And the answer I understand is basically that humans, as part of nature, are part of nature. And as part of nature, especially now when we know modern biology and modern science, we know about that in the sense, nothing could really go out of nature. Something that is part of nature in the end is part of a very strict world of rules. And the basic rule of biology is that every species is trying to protect himself, trying to live, the life instinct, as we call it. And in the end, and this is something that many philosophers talked about, from Nietzsche to Kant. They spoke about the idea that in the end, it's very hard to find something that a person does, which is in the end, in the end of everything, that is not for himself. In the end, the amazing human capacity is a closed box. It's like the movie about the Matrix, right? We're part of something where the human nature is in the end only part of the human nature. If we ever want to touch something that's beyond human, if we ever aspire to something beyond, we'll never be able to use our animal soul. Our animal soul is amazing. It's beautiful and terrible and very interesting, but it's only human. Rabbi Steindas once was speaking about tshuva, about the idea of tshuva and Yom Kippur. And he said, in the end, after all the sins, the basic sin we should be repenting on, that we're only human. So it's not a question of feeling bad or feeling guilty, but it's in the end, we humans and we Jews in a more profound sense have this strive to something that's beyond. Now, how will be able to how can an animal strive to something beyond? You have to have something that comes from beyond. That's the idea of the divine soul. The divine soul is basically what gives us the opportunity to connect to something that's beyond the human realm. Now, the good news is that we have it. It's inside us. That's what the Tanya says. It's a very deep, it's something you have to, it's something that you have to believe in. It's like a belief, like believing in God. And basically it's almost the same thing, because if you think about it, believing in God requires an ability to connect to God, and that requires a divine soul. So in a very, very, very simple sense, the capacity of believing in something that's beyond, something that's truly beyond, something that truly transcends our world, requires a capacity, and that capacity is the divine soul. And so when we talk about divine soul, what we really mean is the part that enables us to do something that is not for our own good, that transcends our own existence. Now, the very binary, the Tanya, one of the great big problems of this book, what makes this book so so painful sometimes to read, because it's a book that's it's not a book you read and then you go to sleep. It's a book that intrigues you, because he paints a very, very strict dichotomy between what belongs to the realm of the holy and what belongs to the realm of the other side. And the realm of the holy is basically whatever wants to be part of God, whatever wants to almost go against yourself to become part of the godliness. And in a very basic sense, that's something that animals don't want to do. I mean, the basic instinct of every human being, of every animal, of every existing form is to exist. And in a deep sense, where we Jews or we people are very paradoxical in this sense, we want to exist, and we also, in a very deep way, and actually Freud talked about it a lot, about the urge to live and the urge to die, the death urge. We want to live, we want to exist. We also want to be part of something much bigger than us. We want to minimize ourselves. And that paradox is written here in the form of two souls. One soul is the soul that wants to be, the soul that's part of the world, the soul that's whole in itself. So when God created the world, it's like when you see a movie and there's a heroine in the movie, there's a hero, there's a figure in the movie. He doesn't need, when you see the movie and if it's a good movie, you don't think about the producer while you're seeing the movie. You're not thinking about the actors. You're thinking about, you're in the story. So when you create a person, you create even in a good novel, when you create a person, a figure, when you create a story about a person, so that person is self-sufficient. He lives inside the book. He can't transcend that book. That's how you make him. When God made us, he made us, in a sense, as people who feel at home here. We feel at home in the world. There's even a beautiful blessing we say before Pesach. when we go out and see, when you see the trees blooming in the spring, especially in Israel, it happens a little bit before Pesach. So there's a blessing we make. Asher bara briot tovot, ilanot tovot ubriot tovot le'anot ben bnei adam. That God created beautiful creatures for people to enjoy. So this is a sense of feeling at home in the world. That's the feeling of the nefesh habehemit. We live here. We feel at home here. We don't need anything that's beyond this world. But on the other hand, we have a different soul, the soul that doesn't feel at home here. So this combination of, and I think Jews have it more, that's at least what the Tanya says, and I think, at least I feel it, this double sense of, on the one hand, we live in this world and we're part of it, and there's amazing things we can achieve as human beings, and this is our realm, this is our place, this is where we belong. And on the other hand, this feeling always of aspiring to something that's beyond this world. We never have words for it. That's why the Tanya is such a hard book, because it's trying to describe things that don't have really good words to describe them. I'm not sure the description of divine soul is such a good description for what he's trying really to say. He's trying to say that we have something that strives for more, for something that's beyond, something that's transcends humanity. Yes.
And I'm trying to think practically what all this means. The human soul, okay, that's what we live with. And sometimes you think, well, if in an action world, okay, so we have action, we do good things, give to charity, help with our children, teach a course like this at late at night on Sunday. But for the divine soul, I mean, I can sort of the feeling, you said you feel it, you're on the top of the Himalayas and you look over the vast universe and you look through a telescope. That's the divinity of it all. But in terms of action, what does it mean to have a divine soul in terms of the day-to-day activities, what we do in terms of interaction with other people, with our environment? I guess I'm having trouble, other than sensing the divine soul is the sense of majesty and beauty and the vastness of the universe. But practically speaking, what does it mean to think of us as a human soul and a divine soul? I mean, I can understand the two competing angels on this battlefield. That I can relate to, because it's an action item. They're saying
the moral. You're looking for
Yeah. So anyway, that's my question. What in terms of action, relationships, what you actually do with your life, how does the divine soul come into your the action part of your life?
That's a very good question. Obviously, I think first of all, the Tanya answered these questions on paragraph 5 and 6. He deals with this in a greater length, but in a very basic sense, it doesn't. I think most people live their lives, and rarely meet, in a real sense, this divine soul. Or maybe they never meet her. And what I was going to say is that it's not only this yearning. What's so radical about the Tanya here, that he actually says that we have it in a very, very practical sense. I mean, in the Kabbalistic terms, nefesh is the lowest part of the soul. So he's not only saying that. I mean, you asked, what does it mean in terms of dealing with other people? So this is very interesting, because we could practice meeting other people and trying to imagine, at least, that what I'm seeing now, when I'm seeing you now, Jeff, for some reason you're big and other people are small, so you're here. I can imagine or think about that what I see, what I know about you, what I see you is only the tip of the iceberg. Not only in the sense that you never really know someone, in the sense that even maybe what you know about yourself is the tip of the iceberg. Because there's something much, much, much bigger about your soul somewhere else. And that's already something very, very powerful, I think, in dealing with other people, especially I teach people. So I'm into education, the ability to see to see beyond the realm of what the person thinks about himself, to see the potential that someone doesn't even know he has. That I think it's connected to this ability to at least to imagine something that's beyond. But maybe in a deeper sense, I think what Tanya will later say is that the divine soul really is crippled. She does not have means of expressing herself. I mean, the animal soul has a vast tool chest of tools to be expressed. And today, when we live in such a world with so many opportunities and so many abilities that we have, we really could. It's almost a crime not to learn how to play an instrument, and not to learn how to and we're all filled with all these books telling you about live life and enhance yourself and enhance your experience, and people really, you really express yourself in many ways. And the question is, how the divine soul expresses herself. And what Tanya says in a few paragraphs is that mitzvot and Torah and all the religious realm of Judaism are basically the ways of the soul to express herself. So basically, you could say that someone who, let's say someone who doesn't know about Judaism, or someone who doesn't really, not really into doing the mitzvot, in some sense, his neshama, his soul, is she doesn't have a place to express herself. It's like someone who doesn't have a voice, and it's very sad. It's something that it also could cause all this yearning of the soul. The soul yearns, but she has to have something to hold on to, as Jeff said. It has to be concrete. She has to express. When you get up in the morning and say Modeh Ani in the morning, that's giving the soul words, giving the soul words. And then when you light the Hanukkah candles, you're giving the soul hands and so on. That's in the.
I want to say something. First of all, it's nice meeting everybody. I'm Aron's brother, and I have also a privilege to be part of this. My Charuta didn't come this time. She's from Montreal. I think she's busy. She's working this today. But I think the question you asked is such a good question, and I'm listening to Aron's words, and I really am getting inspired. So I have to say something. Once I remember Purim. I think it was Purim, and one of the people which got very drunk, and he came to Rav Steinsaltz, and he holded Rav Steinsaltz in his hand, and he said, "Harav, lama chasidim shotim? Why do chasidim do so much l'chaim? We know goyim just drink a lot. Eva. Why do chasidim drink?" And he gave him a very, very, very powerful parable. It's called how do you say mashal?
Parable.
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 Aron speaks English. I speak only Hebrew. So anyway, and the parable was very, very strong for me. And I think every day I remind myself in this special story. And the story says about two good friends, which one was sick in his feet. He couldn't walk. It was very hard for him to walk. The other one was deaf. He couldn't hear. And they're very good friends, and they're going for a walk together. And how do they go for a walk? The deaf person puts the stick person on his shoulders, and they're walking like that. And they come next to a very, very nice tent, which inside is a big wedding, and there's a very, very, very strong band. Maybe very, very lively, and it's happy, and they're playing. It's so nice, it's special. And the one on the top, he really wants to dance. He gets, you feel like the basim, the bass, basim, it pushes you up. You really want to dance. He wants to dance so much, but the one under doesn't hear anything. So what does he do? He takes a little bit l'chaim. He tries pushing in pushing him downstairs. No, give a dance, and he looks like, what happened? Did I get dirty? What happened? What do you want? He doesn't hear anything. So he takes a little bit l'chaim, and he gives him, a few drops of l'chaim, and he gets drunk a little bit, and he starts dancing, a dancing of, it's a kind of dance like that. Now Steinsaltz says he's dancing a drunk dance, but one on top is dancing a wedding dance, and that's what he said about the soul. He used to say, he said they took a soul, a nefesh, and they put it in a chimpanzee. They took a very, very chimpanzee mishuklal, very
sophisticated chimpanzee.
Yeah, very sophisticated chimpanzee. And with that kind of chimpanzee, and on that chimpanzee, he put cheleki lo kamimali, put this nefesh. And the nefesh doesn't have hands. She can't, the only thing she can do is urine. And sometimes, I think sometimes people, when they feel bad or they feel something is not giving them, they don't know how to say the words even. That's the yearning of the soul. I know about myself. Sometimes I have everything. Everything is okay. I'm doing, I went, I get up, I ate, but something is missing. And I think that's the yearning of the soul. Sometimes you could hear it, you could feel it. Like Aron says, when you daven, when you give, sometimes you could give words to that endless yearning of the soul. But that was a parable which every time I remember, it reminds me again about this soul that's inside of me. I'm sorry, Aron.
Thank you, Nathan. Beautiful.
I have a question. I want to go to the beginning of your talk. You asked a very good question at the beginning regarding the book of Rabbi Steinsaltz, The Soul, and we were discussing this question a little bit. Like some of the people in the Tanya track on the Israeli group. We're trying to, I asked this question and I was thinking about it, and this question actually, it was Jeff's question, right? Jeff, you asked me a while ago. And
great mind.
Great have a good answer for it. What?
So, yeah, I'm happy we all concluded the same question.
Yeah. So what do you think about it? You said that you think that it is that.
Let me paraphrase the question, right? So the question is, in the Tanya, it looks very simple. There are two souls fighting each other, and you're the battleground. And in the soul, the book of Rabbi Steinsaltz about the soul, he doesn't talk about this binary, this dichotomy of two souls. He's talking about different levels of the soul. And first of all, also, if it's interesting, also in other books of Baal Tanya, for example, Torah Or and other writings of the Baal Tanya, he doesn't speak about the two souls that much. And I really think this idea of two souls fighting each other is one way of describing what's going on. And the reason he's describing it this way over here, because it's a book that's supposed to be a practical book. And in a practical way, the best way of conceiving this idea is this battle. But in a deeper sense, these souls are intertwined. They, it's like the divine soul isn't something lofty, somewhere above, somewhere. It's inside us in a very embedded way, and it's embedded inside the animal soul. I think today it's easier to understand it because today we have so many identities. I think 200 years ago, when we were all in Ukraine or in Russia or I don't know where do you come from? I'm from Poland. So you had a Jew in a small shtetl somewhere. So life is very simple. You have one identity. And then when you think about these two souls fighting, it's today when we have so many identities, right? Where I'm Jewish and I'm Israeli and I'm a human being. And by the way, I heard a story about the late Rabbi Shlomo Karlebach, that he said when he would come to campuses, so he would ask ask someone, what are you? So if you would say, I'm a Protestant, so you know what? He's a Protestant. If you say, I'm Catholic, you would know I'm Catholic. If someone would say, I'm just a human being, he knew he's a Jew. So we're just human beings, we Jews. That's our neurosa. That's our problem. We're just human beings. But I think when we have so many identities, right? So it's easy for us to understand this idea that when you think about, for example, I'm Israeli and I'm Jewish. They're slightly different identities. It's not like they're fighting it. They're not two different separate parts of me. They're connected, they're intertwined. Sometimes they work hand in hand. Sometimes they're in conflict. And the more identities you have, and we have a lot of identities, the more complex your life becomes. And the idea is, and I think this is also a very practical idea, and this is, I think, the idea of the Tanya is, the question is, who do you identify with? Which part of you are you identifying with? And sometimes you meet, if you have a privilege to meet a tzaddik, to meet someone who's truly divine, truly righteous, and it's amazing. You always say, how is he so good? How is he so, for me, davening is like, davening seriously is such a burden. It's so hard. And for him, it's natural. Or studying for him, or being nice is so natural. And when you think about it, this idea of identifying with. So usually we identify, when I look at my day, so when I wake up in the morning, my whole being, my whole identification, my whole existence is my body. I'm thinking about brushing my teeth. I'm thinking about the coffee. I'm thinking about, and usually I can't get to the coffee because I have 4 kids and it takes time till I could get to the coffee. So that's who I am right now. You are what you think about. You are what you're existing. And when I think about other things, I'm in a different place. I'm a different person. These identities, the divine soul and the animal soul, are mixed. They're intertwined, and we have the ability to decide who are we, who do we want to be. And the tzaddik isn't just someone. The tzaddik isn't just someone who is from outer space. He doesn't have any problems. He's just someone that, after a lot of work or a lot of hard work, usually, his level of identity is basically he identified with his soul and less with his animal soul and less with his body. And it's just a question of it's very simple to say it, but it's very hard, obviously very hard to do. But I think also in our lives, in our small lives, I think we could, at least to some degree, choose where do we want to identify. Where am I? Am I now a body? Am I now a human being? Am I now someone who's striving to get to God? And that I think that's the call. That's the calling of this book. The calling of this book is choose. Try to choose to identify with your higher aspects, your higher parts. Jeff, you want to say something?
I jump for a second. Sorry, I just wanted to, so a couple of things I wanted to mention. The first one is what a pleasure it is to meet your brother, who I've never met, known you since you were a young guy. Not that you're not a young guy now, but that was really a pleasure. But also the other thing, so
very, very young. He was very young one time, very, very, very young. He was very young. I remember it's a pleasure.
Yeah, it was very nice to meet you. But what I was going to say is, I think it's a great question that the gentleman who's in my lower right-hand corner, but I don't know his name. I didn't catch your name. I'm sorry, but
I'm Jeff.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, great question that he asked, and the way your answer evolved, Aron, I thought was terrific. And one additional thing that I would add to what you said, from my experience, is you are saying what you identify with, And I think part of it is an awareness. So that's like another way of, maybe it's just another way of saying identify with, but it's also, it's when you become more aware when you're doing certain things, or really it's, so it's not like, Jeff, you had said, you know, in what are the actions that you do that are, you know, those are all kind of our animal soul. And when you're standing on top of a mountain and you're, you know, so I like very much identify that with that, because, you know, as I grew up, my more like divine soul feeling definitely came about when I was outside in nature, like on a top of a mountain or whatever. So, but like, as I've grown and as you do more things that are, I think things that you, so for example, learning Torah, it's not just to develop your mind. There's a lot of other things going on. And over time, it's sort of being aware of these other sort of another element of yourself that's not just the animal soul. I think it kind of comes to me that way. And so it doesn't, as well as, by the way, but it could be doing, you know, mundane things that seem very, you know, animal soul-ish type things. And I think that's sort of the point of infusing your life. I was going to also mention, it also, I think very much depends on who you keep company with. So, you know, there's something, Aron, you could probably identify where it comes from because I don't remember, but talks about how important it is who your friends are, who you keep company with, because you, that very much impacts who you are and who you become and the things that you are involved in and the action. So if you're, you know, if you keep company with if you keep company with Aron Billet, you're going to be definitely thinking more. I don't mean to embarrass you, Aron, but you're going to Binyamin Zuckerman. You're going to become more aware of other parts of yourself that are really part of you. It's part of, as Aron perfectly said, I thought like integrated. This is just my limited experience with this. I'm certainly no expert here, but I think it's, for me, it comes about identifying, but also it's just awareness, and you become more aware of it over time. And then it is really like they are interwoven and intertwined.
Wow.
So
Thank you, Leslie. Wow. So, yeah, it's a beautiful description of how it works. I think some people have it easier. Some people are natural. It's like some people have a better sense of musical hearing, or some people have a better taste for wine, and some people have a harder time. But I want to give one last point, which I think also connects what you were saying, Leslie. There's also one point where this divine soul could come out, and that's, you talked about it later in the book, in times of crisis. And the typical crisis for a Jew is something we practice every day for this moment that we hope will never come, or some people hope it will come, or Rabbi Akiva was waiting for it to come. The point that you have to choose when this big choice comes, and the Gentile, this, I don't know, the Paritz from the Shtetl, or the Spanish Inquisition, or whatever, the Romans, and they come and they say to you, now make a choice. Are you a Jew, or we're going to kill you? And in that moment, what the Baal Tanya says is where the divine soul kicks in. It's like those cars with the robotic engine. You start the engine with the regular engine, and then the robot kicks in. You feel it taking over. So you're living your life, and this terrible crisis comes, and suddenly the divine soul takes over, and now you're not acting on behalf of your what you know about yourself, what you experience about yourself. Something totally new is happening. Something totally new is acting here on your behalf, And every Jew had this capacity to, and this is something that historical is very true. Many Jews in very different scenarios were able to perform amazing acts of courage and piety in very hard conditions. And we all have it. I mean, it's our grandparents, it's our grandfathers, we all, I mean, we could, it's nice that we talk about it now. It's very intellectual, but I think for our grandparents, it was something very simple in a sense. This idea that of the divine soul, it's something that was maybe more natural. We live very, very comfortable lives in many ways, so it's easier to forget. But we descend a long generation of very radical Jews who made a point of not leaving Judaism. That's why we're here, and this idea of the soul kicking in this moment, that's the basic soul. And I'll just conclude with a story Rabbi Steindal's told many times. He was teaching Tanya to a group of secular intellectuals in Jerusalem when he in his 20s, and he came to the part in the Tanya says that every Jew, when he's in gunpoint, when he comes to this moment, he chooses not to leave God, not to leave his divine soul, and to be a martyr, to Soret HaNefesh. And one of the people asked him in the course, he asked him, is this still true today? I mean, it was true many years ago. Is it still true today? Many Jews aren't connected to Judaism. Is this still true? And Rabbi Steindal said that he doesn't know. He answered frankly. I rarely heard him say, I don't know. But that's what he said. He said, I don't know. And the course, and he finished the lecture, finished the class. The day afterwards, or a few days afterwards, he was invited to speak in a secular kibbutz in the Negev. In those days, the rabbi would he would travel to many kibbutzim and try to provoke very secular Jews and try to talk about Judaism. We're talking about the 60s. It wasn't very popular, and secular Israel was extremely secular. And so he came to this kibbutz, and Rabbi Steindal was never polite. He was never, and he spoke very frankly. I told him, he was trying to provoke them. He told them, what's Jewish about you? How are you being Jewish? How are you? You don't look like Jews. You don't act like Jews. Your second generation won't even be Jewish. You don't know what Judaism is. And people were getting quite angry, and rightfully angry. And one of the people from the kibbutz, very secular person, he got up and he was all red and he was shouting, and he said, you should know I'm secular. I don't keep Shabbos. I don't. But if now I had the choice of leaving Judaism or die, I would definitely die. So the rabbi said, I got an answer right away to my question, that something is still there. I think in many ways. Doesn't mean it always kicks in. It doesn't mean we always see it. And obviously there are many Jews who are leaving, and that's it's very, very sad. But it's sad also in the sense of this divine soul, because our divine soul is one soul, something we didn't really talk about. But our divine soul is basically one. When one leaves, it's like an autoimmunic malady. It's something that the body is fighting itself. But in a deep sense, I think we still have this divine soul, and we still have it's still operating on behalf of us. And I think we have to enable it. We have to. This is what the book is about. Try to give the soul words. Try to give the soul hands and feet, and try to live the life of the soul, the divine soul. So I think it's already too much for one day. Can't too much Tanya. It's dangerous.
Thank you.
תודה רבה, Aron.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's nice to see all of you. Really, really happy.
תודה רבה to everybody. Thank you
Thank
for
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aron.
Are you willing to sit down for questions, or we're done now?
Definitely. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not used to Zoom lectures. Definitely that. Yeah, I'm
I'd like to ask a question, but bring it maybe way down. Is somebody else talking, or shall I speak?
No, go on. Yeah.
Okay. I'll go from the divine and the philosophical, sort of like Jeff, to the very, very practical level, because I'm trying to wrap my head around the many dualities. It seems like there are several dualities. There's the evil inclination and the divine inclination, is it? Yatsahara. But there's also let me get to the practical question. Compared to a dog or a horse knows exactly what to eat to survive. They don't eat food that's not fresh, and they only eat the amount they need. I, on the other hand, a human, I might eat ice cream and I might want more and more ice cream that's not good for me. Is the decision of how much ice cream to eat, for example, is that the should I be trying to call on, to be aware of my divine soul that would tell me you don't need more ice cream? Or is that not an area? Is the ice cream thing not an area where the divine soul is involved? I think I need, can you help me illuminate all these dualities and which voice is speaking to which sort of situation, please?
First of all, I don't think anything that makes you eat less ice cream, I don't know, it's questionable. I'm a very big fan of ice cream. So I don't want to speak any, let's choose a different, maybe alcohol, I don't know. Ice cream is always good. I don't know, in the way I see it, and I'm not sure I'm an expert in any way, is that decisions that regard how to live in a sensible way, in a smart way, in a way that preserves life and healthy, is still in the realm of the animal soul, in the sense that you're right, animals have better instincts in some way, and biology gave us other things that animals don't have. So we don't have the instincts of how to choose the right berries or how to choose the right mushrooms, but we could invent airplanes and submarines and nuclear bombs. So I think it's still part of
Pfizer. Pfizer.
Yeah, we could create in Israel now, it's a big thing, the vaccination. So we still have this ability to lead a very successful life. I mean, human beings are now dominating the planet. We're dominating, we're dominating it in a very dangerous way in many ways. So I think questions about sensible behavior are still part of our species trying to preserve ourselves. I mean, if I know that too much that smoking is not good for me, I don't feel it. It's not an instinct, but it's my brain is telling it to me. So it's still part of the natural realm of being a human, is to make the right decisions. I think the divine soul is really something that decisions that require minimizing myself. I mean, going against myself, doing an act of true kindness. When I'm not going to get anything in return. That's something very rare, and that's something that I think we need a divine soul for, because there's no reason. And actually, neo-Darwinist scientists are for many years trying to explain the idea of nedivut, of being kind, of kindness. What does kindness give? In
biology, it's called altruism.
Altruism, right? What is altruism? So first of all, true altruism is very rare. Like the Tanya says in the first parak here, most altruism isn't really altruism. You're doing it for the good feeling. You're doing it for feeling good with yourself, or you're doing it to get something in return. But true altruism that I think that's a realm where the divine soul kicks in. Something that goes against your interest. But again, back to the ice cream question, Rabbi Steindl used to say that chocolate is not food. Chocolate is for the soul. Chocolate it's straight for the soul. The body doesn't enjoy it, but the soul enjoys it. So actually, he was referring to an old idea about eating on Shabbat. That idea of Shabbat, the food. I mean, obviously, the food is for the body, but in a deep sense, the food of Shabbat is also for the soul. So there's something about the food that gives a different kind of eating, a different kind of food. So that's something we could try out this Shabbos. Try to feel how the food is going to the soul.
Okay. I think that another way to look at it, and this is also mentioned in one of the chapters that I hope we'll get to later, that the question about the ice cream is not whether to eat it or not, or whether to eat more of it or less of it, but rather it's a question of how am I eating the ice cream. So I can eat a lot of ice cream and I can eat just a little bit of ice cream, and both can be very animal soul based and related. And I can also eat a lot of ice cream, but it can be, as Aron said, a spiritual act. So it's not a question of the quantity, but the question of what is my intention, or what is my how I address this ice cream, what I see, what I experience with from the ice cream. And the ice cream can be, as the Alter Rebbe explains, it can be very primitive and animal thing that the human body wants. And it can also be a way to connect to God. And it depends on our mind. It does not depend on the amount of the ice cream, but it depends on what I think about the ice cream, what I'm trying to experience with this ice cream. And this is an important question, but I will stop here.
Like maybe if we eat the question with, eat the ice cream and we think, I'm so grateful that God has given us this amazing taste, sense of taste, and this vanilla bean. Is that the sort of thing? The divine?
Yes, it can. I think it's possible. It's possible if we try to experience and to feel through the pleasure of the ice cream, the inner spiritual part of the ice cream, which is created by God, and understanding that the ice cream is not just a physical entity. It's also like Rabbi Steindl said, a chocolate is not a physical. It's a spiritual thing. And it's true about the ice cream as well, but it depends whether I'm focused and I'm thinking about it, and I'm trying to see and feel and serve God with the pleasure that I get from the ice cream and the chocolate. And sometimes, you don't do a meditation on a piece of ice cream, but it is something that helps you to continue your day and give a smile to your neighbor or your family, or and make one more good thing just because you have a better mood because of the ice cream. So the ice cream can be can serve godly and divine purposes, but it can also be just a simple chimpanzee act of eating. And this is up to us to try to make the ice cream, like the Alter Rebbe says, we can make the ice cream like the sacrifice on the Mizbeach in the Holy Temple. Our ice cream that I eat at home can be actually a holy, just as a sacrifice in the Beit HaMikdash, and it just depends on what I have in mind. Not on the amount of the ice cream, but what I have in mind.
Beautiful. It all comes back to our attitude and our.
I'm so grateful for your question, because I'll never eat ice cream again after Binyamin's explanation. I'm going to think about every time I have ice cream.
Thank you. Fabulous. You're blowing my mind.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Aron, again.
Thank you.